Hi, I'm Christy with Dementia Sherpa. So I had a lot of responses to the video that I put out talking about the so what philosophy of care, and well, most people appreciated it. The number one question I got back was, "Okay, Christy, so what about bathing? Is that a so what deal or not so much?" So here we go. We're going to talk about bathing, which is a really big deal. As you probably already know, for people who are living with dementia, bathing is about as popular with them as it is with a cat. And actually, I think cats like taking a shower more than people living with dementia do. So it's really bad news, right? It's something that basically you can end up getting injured. And we don't want that, and we definitely don't want it for your loved one. So before I tell you how you can do it, it's really important to know why people don't want to do it, because that really can help you understand why there's a problem in the first place. And in fact, just off the top of my head, I came up with like 10 or 11 reasons. So I'm going to be looking down on my laptop here to make sure I give all of those reasons to you. So, okay, number one, this is a pretty simple one. They think they already did it, so there's no point in doing it, right? They did it. As we already know, reason and logic never ever work. So, this is just a really good way to get into an argument. Don't do it. So if that's the reason they give you, please don't get into an argument. Number two, really simple here. You're not the boss of them. And they're just not having it. So, if somebody changed your diaper, if they powdered your butt, you're going to be really hard pressed to change that power dynamic, especially if you're asking them to do something they don't want to do. The other part of that is maybe you're taking care of your partner, right? So you took wedding vows and that whole in sickness and in health thing, the sickness part kind of seemed vague and far off, right? And now, again, that's a weird change in the power structure of a relationship, so you can run into some problems there. Number three, so this is going to depend on where your loved one is in the disease process, but even if they're living at home with you, if they're far enough along in the disease process that they don't recognize you, then basically you're asking them to take their clothes off for a stranger. And if your loved one is living in a community, even if they're not as far along in the disease process, the staff are going to be people who are new to them. So again, same problem. You're basically asking them, or someone else is asking them, to take their clothes off, and it's someone that they're perceiving as a stranger. And, most of us just say no to that. So that can be a problem. Number four, it hurts. And a lot of people don't know this. So as we age, our skin gets thinner. It really thins out. It loses its elasticity. There's a multi-billion-dollar beauty business about this, right? Keeping your skin firm and keeping the elasticity and collagen, and I'm not even sure what that is. But anyway, the point is, people end up with tissue paper thin skin, and I'm talking one ply. So then you have a shower spray that feels like needles. That's what it feels like, coming down and hitting that tissue paper thin skin. So it hurts, and therefore people aren't that interested in doing stuff that hurts, right? Number five, it's too cold in the bathroom. So here's the thing. For people living with dementia, their internal thermostat is pretty much cooked. It just doesn't work. So if you're like me, you probably at some point have wondered, like, why do people, it seems like older adults, there's always, every time there's a heat wave in the summer, there are older adults who die. You don't really understand why. Well, here's why. It's because that internal thermostat doesn't work. So it can be 100 degrees outside, but they're experiencing it as being cold. So they will put on extra layers. And a lot of times on top of that, will purposely dehydrate themselves because they don't want to have an incontinent episode. So that's how people end up dying. But the principle here is the same. That internal thermostat doesn't work. So if it's too cold in the bathroom, they don't want to take their clothes off. And that can be really challenging for us who, like, if it's 100 degrees outside, we're going to have the air conditioner running, right? And then for some of us of a certain age, we might be subject to power surges, shall we say. So we like it even cooler. So that can really be a problem there. Let's see. The water's too hot. And that's just really, that's a personal preference, right? You're just going to have to kind of tinker around with that until you hit the Goldilocks temperature. But you don't want the water to start flowing after someone's standing under the spray or sitting in a shower chair under the spray. You want the water temperature, you want them to test that on their finger. Obviously, you're going to test it on yours first and make sure that it feels okay before you subject them to that. Number 7. It's dangerous. This is how they're perceiving it. Anybody who has ever had that kind of windmill moment in the shower where you think you're going to fall, that's not pretty. And so that can be a problem if somebody has fallen in the shower or if they've had a near miss. Remember, to the extent that people are able to remember things or to make new memories, it's how much emotion was behind it. So if you're scared spitless that you're going to fall and break your neck or break your hip, that could be a memory that sticks, right? So fear of falling is a big one. Let's see. Number 8, it triggers a flashback. I hate to share this story, but it's a true story, and it's an awful true story, but for this one man, this was probably 5 years ago or so. I went to, I heard a speaker talking about, she was with APS and had done an investigation because he was alleging that the staff had abused him, and it was always during shower time. And through the investigation, what was determined was that he had been a prisoner of war. And he had been tortured with water. So we don't always know what's happened, even in our own family. I had a grandfather who served in World War II that absolutely would not talk about it. I assume it was a horrible experience, but I mean, he would not talk about it as though it never happened. And toward the end of his life, when the Parkinson's related dementia really took hold, he did start having flashbacks to wartime. So we don't know sometimes things that may have happened. So there may be a very solid reason why that there's a big resistance to showering. Okay, and speaking of resistance to it, maybe they're feeling like they didn't do anything that requires a good scrubbing. So I have grandparents who came to California during the Dust Bowl, and they were migrant farm workers, and that's hard, sweaty, dusty, awful work. That's tough, right? Well, but how they grew up was there was the one bath Saturday night, because that was so you'd be ready for church on Sunday morning. And if you were lucky, you were the first kid in the tub, right? You got the fresh water, but you might have been the 6th or 7th kid in the tub. Same water. So, we with our highfalutin fancy cell phones and running water and indoor plumbing have different ideas about hygiene than maybe generations past. So could be what we euphemistically like to call differing lifestyle values. So, but that's a real thing. And like anybody else, they hate feeling done unto, right? For any of us, any adult, we, part of our identity is being independent. And that's a real hard thing to give up when somebody is doing something to you. It just doesn't feel good. And finally, this leads me to the 11th thing. speaking of it just doesn't feel good, that's putting somebody in a very vulnerable position, right? So you take any combination of those things, and there's a lot of vulnerability there. With the being dependent, with being naked, with maybe bad things that have happened in the past, or we're asking them to do something that's never been part of their life, a routine thing. So, big difference. So, that's why you can end up having somebody who's really resistant, right? So, here's the secret sauce. Okay. Number one, if somebody is always only taking a shower one time a week, please don't expect them to change that. You're not going to change that. It's not going to happen. Not helpful. Okay. So you need to accept it's going to happen one time a week. The end. That's it. Number two, if it's painful, look at the shower head. You know, they have these fantastic water pick shower heads that are detachable. So number one, that's handy because somebody can be sitting on a shower bench and you can hand them the shower head where they can have control over it, right? Or you can change the settings so it's more of a flow rather than 1,000 needles coming down at them. Where it's more of a flow. It's a softer water thing. And I think now with a lot of the water pressure changes that we've experienced, particularly on the West Coast, there's not as much water pressure, so that's somewhat helpful. So the third thing is probably, and again, I know you all hate this, I know you do, like the entire experience, but also the part where I'm the one who's always saying, you're the one who has to change. So I just want to tell you, I'm sorry, but yeah, you're the one who has to change. I'm going to say the same thing. You're the one who has to change because you have the ability to do that. Your loved one is it has a disease that is attacking his or her brain, so they're not able to change. So you're going to change your expectations, right? You're going to make some changes to the temperature, to the environment. You're going to change thinking how often it needs to happen. You're going to change thinking how it needs to look. Okay, so the deal is we're going for clean, right? And sometimes we get fixated on, no, it must be a shower. A shower is the only way to get clean because that's how we grew up and that's what's normal for us. Does not mean that's what's normal for our parents or for our partner. So, deep breath, as with anything related to dementia, giant deep breath. Then we're going to think, okay, so now this is where we get to the so what. So what that they don't want to take a shower? No great shakes. That doesn't mean that we're not going to help them get clean, okay? So we can do that a lot of different ways. There's such a thing as no rinse shampoo. There's such a thing as no rinse soap. There's also the good old soapy washcloth that you hand to someone. Here, why don't you go ahead and do your face? And boom, boom, boom. Then you're working on the rest of them, right? And it could be while they're standing right there in front of the sink. They're washing their face and you're, and we all know what the hot spots are, right? So bottom line, if that's what it comes down to, and the hot spots are the only places that they're going to allow you to clean, that is a major victory. That's huge, right? There's also for people who are not able, that they're not mobile anymore and need to be in bed, there's bed bath. And everybody's pretty familiar with that concept. So it's the same thing. You're going to wash a part of the body at the time, at a time. So you definitely don't want someone stripped down naked and shivering, right? You're just going to do a part at a time, dry it off, move on. There's also, it's like inflatable and you can lay their head back in it, get the hair washed that way, or again, there's no rinse shampoo. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. As long the main thing is you give up that idea of it has to look like somebody completely strips down and then steps into that shower and that's how it has to happen. Once you give that up, the world is kind of your oyster because then you can get really creative, right? But let's say that your loved one is willing to strip down and is willing to get into the shower, but there's a lot of fear. Okay, So here are a couple ways to handle that. Number one, strips. Let's get some strips in the bottom of the tub, right? Those no skid strips. Number two, bars. You can either drill holes in the tile, the drywall, or whatever's around the shower, or you can go to Home Depot and use the suction cup kind grab bars, which it seems crazy, but I gotta tell you, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. They really do work. This is not cheap crap that's going to result in a disaster. They work really well. So you can use that. Use the shower bench or the shower chair. So you can have just a plain old bench, or you can have one that also has back support. The detachable shower wand. So all of these things are going to make showering an actual possibility at your house. Hope that helps, and as usual, let me know if you have any questions.